Welcome to Sleepy Night History. Tonight, we travel back in time, far beyond the modern world, far beyond the cities we know today. We travel more than 4,500 years into the past, to the land of ancient Egypt, a land of desert and river, a land where the rhythm of life followed the slow and patient flow of the Nile, and where, one day, a king would command the building of the most famous monument in human history, the Great Pyramid of Giza. But our story does not begin with stone blocks or towering pyramids. It begins much earlier, in a quiet morning along the Nile River. Ancient Egypt was a land shaped by one thing above all others: the Nile River. Every year, the river flooded, slowly and predictably. The waters rose during the summer months. They spread across the farmland along the riverbanks. And when the flood waters retreated, they left behind rich, black soil, perfect for growing crops. Wheat, barley, vegetables, and flax. Farmers waited patiently for this yearly flood, because without the Nile, the surrounding land was mostly desert, golden sand stretching endlessly toward the horizon. But along the river, life flourished. Villages appeared beside the fertile fields. Small boats moved quietly through the water. Fishing nets drifted beneath the reeds, and farmers worked the land beneath the warm Egyptian sun. This predictable cycle of flooding and farming gave Egypt something very rare in the ancient world: stability. Food was plentiful, harvests were reliable, and with steady food supplies, Egyptian society began to grow stronger, more organized, more ambitious. Over time, small villages grew into towns, towns grew into cities, and eventually, all the lands along the Nile came under the rule of powerful kings. These kings were known as pharaohs. To the ancient Egyptians, the pharaoh was not simply a political ruler. He was something more. The pharaoh was believed to be chosen by the gods, a living connection between heaven and earth. He maintained order in the world. He ensured the Nile continued to flood. He protected Egypt from chaos. The Egyptians called this divine balance Ma'at, the natural order of the universe. As long as the pharaoh ruled wisely, Ma'at would continue. The sun would rise each morning, the Nile would flood each year, and Egypt would prosper. The period of Egyptian history when the Great Pyramid was built is known today as the Old Kingdom, sometimes called the Age of the Pyramids. It began around 2700 BC. By this time, Egypt had become a powerful and organized kingdom. The capital of the country lay near the Nile Delta, in a region close to modern Cairo. There, royal palaces stood beside temples. Government officials recorded taxes and harvests. Scribes carefully wrote on papyrus scrolls. The Egyptian government had already become surprisingly advanced. There were administrators, architects, priests, engineers, and thousands of workers organized into labor teams. This was a society capable of managing enormous projects that required planning, resources, and the cooperation of many thousands of people. Egyptians believed deeply in the afterlife. They believed that death was not the end of existence. Instead, it was the beginning of a new journey, a journey into the next world. But for that journey to succeed, The body of the deceased had to be preserved, and the spirit had to be protected. This belief led Egyptians to develop elaborate burial practices. The bodies of kings were preserved through mummification, and their tombs were filled with objects they might need in the afterlife. Food, furniture, jewelry, tools, even boats, because the next world was believed to mirror the one they had known in life. For ordinary people, burial places were simple, but for kings, the tomb had to be something far greater, a monument worthy of a divine ruler, something that would last forever. Before the Great Pyramid, Egyptian kings had already begun experimenting with monumental tombs. Early rulers were buried beneath large rectangular structures called mastabas. These were flat-topped tombs built from stone or mud brick. But as Egypt grew more powerful, its kings desired something even more impressive, something that would rise toward the sky. Around 2630 BC, a brilliant architect named Imhotep designed the first pyramid structure, a stepped pyramid built for the pharaoh Djoser. This pyramid rose above the desert like a giant staircase. It was unlike anything the world had seen before. Over time, Egyptian builders experimented further. They tried new shapes, new angles, new construction techniques. One king in particular pushed pyramid building to new heights, a pharaoh named Sneferu. Sneferu ruled Egypt during the 4th dynasty. He was the father of the future king Khufu. Sneferu built several pyramids during his reign. One of them is known today as the Bent Pyramid. Halfway up its sides, the angle suddenly changes, perhaps because the builders feared the structure might collapse. Another of Sneferu's pyramids, called the Red Pyramid, was the first true smooth-sided pyramid. These experiments taught Egyptian architects something important. They learned how to build pyramids safely, how to control the angles of the sides, how to place stones with incredible precision. These lessons would soon be used for something far greater, because Sneferu's son, a young prince named Khufu, was preparing to become king. And Khufu would dream of building a monument unlike anything ever seen before. Very little is known about Khufu's early life, but we know he was born into a powerful royal family. His father, Sneferu, had already established Egypt as a strong kingdom. When Khufu became pharaoh, he inherited a stable and wealthy nation, one capable of building enormous monuments. And Khufu had a vision, a tomb that would surpass every monument built before, a pyramid so large, so precise, that it would stand as the ultimate symbol of royal power, a structure that would rise above the desert and remain visible for miles in every direction. The pyramid that Khufu imagined would become the greatest pyramid ever built. But at the moment our story pauses, the pyramid does not yet exist. The desert plateau of Giza lies quiet beneath the sun. Wind moves slowly across the sand. The Nile flows peacefully through the valley below. Farmers work the fields beside the river. Boats drift along the water. And somewhere within the royal palace, the young pharaoh Khufu begins to imagine a monument that will last for eternity. A monument built from millions of stones. A monument that will stand for thousands of years. A monument we now know as the Great Pyramid of Giza. But first, the king must choose where this monument will rise.
and gather the people who will build it. Architects, engineers, workers, thousands of lives that will come together for a single purpose. And that is where our story will continue, in the next part, when the desert plateau of Giza is chosen, and the first plans for the greatest pyramid in history begin to take shape. The sun rises slowly over ancient Egypt. The light spreads across the desert. Golden sand begins to glow beneath the morning sky, and along the banks of the Nile, life begins again. Boats drift quietly across the water. Farmers walk through the damp fields left behind by the retreating flood. The world of ancient Egypt moves slowly and calmly with the rhythm of the river. And far away, inside the royal palace, a new king now sits upon the throne of Egypt. His name is Khufu. To the Egyptians, he was known as Khnum Khufu, which meant Khnum protects me. Khufu ruled Egypt more than 4,500 years ago, during a time historians now call the Old Kingdom. It was an age of confidence and ambition, an age when the kings of Egypt believed their monuments would last forever, and Khufu would soon begin the greatest monument of them all. When Khufu became pharaoh, he inherited a powerful kingdom. His father, the great king Sneferu, had already transformed Egypt into a nation capable of enormous construction. Sneferu had built pyramids across the Egyptian desert, huge monuments made from millions of stones. These projects had required careful planning, thousands of workers, and an organized government that could feed and manage them. By the time Khufu became king, Egypt had learned how to build pyramids. But Khufu wanted something greater, something that would surpass every monument built before. The young king ruled from a royal capital near the Nile. Nearby stood the great city of Memphis, one of the most important cities in the ancient world. Merchants arrived there from many regions of Egypt. Boats carried grain along the river. Stone blocks floated on barges. Officials recorded taxes and harvests. Scribes sat in quiet rooms copying documents onto papyrus scrolls. Egypt was already a complex society. Its government had layers of authority: viziers, administrators, architects, priests, and countless scribes who recorded every detail of the kingdom. At the center of this system stood the pharaoh, the living king, the divine ruler. To the people of Egypt, the pharaoh was more than a human ruler. He was believed to be chosen by the gods. He maintained the balance of the world. He protected Egypt from chaos. And when the pharaoh died, he was believed to become divine, joining the gods in the afterlife. But this transformation required preparation. The king's body had to be preserved. His tomb had to be protected, and his burial monument had to endure for eternity. This belief would soon shape one of the most remarkable building projects in human history.
Khufu began to think about the monument that would hold his tomb. He had seen the pyramids built by his father. He knew what Egyptian builders were capable of, but he wanted something that had never been attempted before. A pyramid larger than any built in Egypt, a pyramid that would rise high above the desert horizon, something that travelers could see from miles away, something that would reflect the glory of the pharaoh and the power of Egypt itself. To build such a monument, Khufu would need more than ambition. He would need the greatest minds of his kingdom: architects, engineers, administrators, men capable of organizing one of the largest construction efforts in the ancient world. And among these men, one official stood above the rest. His name was Hemiunu. Hemiunu was the vizier of Egypt, the highest official beneath the king. In many ways, he functioned like a prime minister. He oversaw the administration of the kingdom. He supervised royal building projects, and he coordinated the thousands of workers who served the state. Hemiunu was also a man of knowledge. He understood mathematics, surveying, engineering, and the careful organization required for massive projects. It is widely believed that Hemiunu supervised the design and construction of Khufu's Great Pyramid. Under his guidance, Egypt's engineers began to plan a monument that would dwarf every structure built before. The first step was choosing the location. The site needed strong bedrock, access to the Nile, and enough space for a large construction project. The royal planners eventually chose a desert plateau west of the Nile, a place known today as Giza Plateau. At the time, this plateau overlooked the fertile Nile Valley. From its rocky surface, the future pyramid would be visible across the entire region. The ground there was made of solid limestone, perfect for supporting a massive stone structure. And the site stood close enough to the Nile that materials could be transported easily by boat. The location was ideal. Surveyors soon arrived at the plateau. They carried measuring ropes, wooden stakes, and simple tools used for marking the ground. These men were skilled in geometry. They carefully measured the desert surface. They studied the stars, because the pyramid had to be aligned with the four directions of the world: north, south, east, and west. The accuracy of their work would later amaze modern engineers. The base of the Great Pyramid is aligned almost perfectly with true north. Even today, few structures achieve such precision. Once the location had been chosen, the planning truly began. Architects calculated the size of the pyramid. They designed internal chambers, passageways, and corridors that would lead to the king's burial chamber deep within the structure. The pyramid would stand more than 140 meters tall. Its base would stretch more than 200 meters across. To achieve this scale, millions of stone blocks would be required, each one cut, transported, and placed with remarkable precision. It would be one of the most ambitious construction projects the world had ever seen. But the pyramid was not simply a pile of stones. It was part of a much larger complex. There would be a temple near the river, where the king's body would be prepared for burial. A long stone causeway would connect this temple to the pyramid. And beside the pyramid itself, additional temples and smaller pyramids would be built for members of the royal family. The entire complex was carefully planned. Every structure had meaning. Every structure had purpose. The pyramid stood at the center, but around it, an entire sacred landscape would take shape. While the planners worked, life across Egypt continued as always. Farmers planted crops beside the Nile. Fishermen cast nets into the river. Craftsmen shaped tools and pottery. Children ran through village streets. Egypt was a living civilization. Its daily life continued quietly, even as preparations began for one of the greatest monuments ever imagined. And far away, on the quiet desert plateau of Giza, the wind moved slowly across the sand. Survey markers stood in the ground. Plans were being drawn. Measurements carefully recorded. Soon, workers would arrive. Quarries would open. Stone blocks would begin to move, and the first layer of the Great Pyramid would rise from the desert floor. But for now, the plateau remains calm. The monument exists only in the minds of the king and his architects, a vision waiting to become stone. And that is where our story will continue, because the next step will require something extraordinary: the gathering of materials, the organization of thousands of workers, and the beginning of a project that will take decades to complete. A monument built one stone at a time, in the quiet desert of ancient Egypt. The desert plateau of Giza Plateau lies quiet beneath the Egyptian sun. The land is dry, rocky. Wind moves slowly across the sand. From this high ground, the Nile Valley can be seen stretching across the horizon. A ribbon of green life surrounded by a golden desert. And here, on this ancient plateau, the plans for the greatest monument in Egyptian history begin to unfold. The King Khufu has chosen this place for his eternal tomb. His architects and officials now gather to transform the desert into a sacred construction site. But before a single stone can be placed, the ground itself must be prepared. Workers arrive at the plateau. Surveyors, stonecutters, engineers, administrators. Some travel by boat along the Nile. Others arrive on foot from nearby villages. They bring with them ropes for measuring, wooden stakes, copper tools, stone hammers, and baskets for clearing debris. The first task is leveling the ground. The pyramid will stand on a base that must be nearly perfect. Even a small tilt could weaken the entire structure. So the workers begin removing uneven rock from the surface of the plateau. They cut into the limestone bedrock. They smooth the ground carefully, day after day, week after week. Slowly, the foundation of the pyramid begins to take shape. A vast square carved into the desert floor. Egyptian surveyors were remarkably skilled. They used simple but precise tools, measuring cords, wooden sighting instruments, and careful observation of the stars. To align the pyramid with the cardinal directions, they likely studied the movement of stars in the northern sky. By watching the rotation of certain stars around the celestial pole, they could identify true north. Modern studies showed the pyramid's alignment is astonishingly accurate, even by modern engineering standards. The four sides of the Great Pyramid point almost perfectly toward north, south, east, and west. This precision reflects the deep knowledge Egyptian architects had already developed. Once the ground is leveled, the enormous base of the pyramid begins to appear. The square foundation measures about 230 meters on each side. Large wooden stakes mark the corners. Ropes stretch across the desert floor between them. The pyramid's footprint is now visible for the first time, a vast square drawn across the plateau. Soon, stone will begin to fill this space. Millions of stones, each one placed carefully by human hands. But before construction can truly begin, another challenge must be solved. Stone. An unimaginable amount of stone will be required. Historians estimate the Great Pyramid contains roughly 2.3 million blocks of limestone and granite. Each block weighs several tons, some even heavier. The builders must find these stones, cut them, transport them, and raise them high into the growing structure. To achieve this, Egypt will draw resources from across the entire kingdom. Fortunately, the Giza Plateau itself contains limestone. The bedrock beneath the pyramid can be quarried directly. Workers begin cutting blocks from the surrounding rock, using copper chisels, stone hammers, and wooden wedges. They carve rectangular blocks from the limestone. The work is slow. Dust rises into the hot desert air. The sound of hammers striking stone echoes across the plateau. But gradually, the first building blocks are prepared. These stones will form the inner core of the pyramid, layer after layer rising toward the sky. Yet the outer surface of the pyramid must be something more beautiful. The pharaoh desires a monument that shines, something that reflects sunlight across the desert. For this, a finer type of limestone is required, white limestone from the Tura quarries across the Nile. These stones are smoother, brighter, more elegant.
They will form the outer casing of the pyramid, giving it a brilliant white surface that glows beneath the Egyptian sun. To transport these stones, boats are used. Large wooden barges move slowly along the Nile River, loaded with heavy blocks of limestone. Recent discoveries of ancient papyri describe this process, documents written by Egyptian officials. One of them, a man named Merer, recorded the transport of limestone from the Tura quarries to Giza. These papyri are among the oldest administrative documents ever discovered. They reveal how organized the construction project truly was. Teams of workers loading stones onto boats, sailing along canals connected to the Nile, and unloading the stones near the pyramid site.
Granite is also required for the most important chambers inside the pyramid. This stone is far harder than limestone, and it must be transported from very far away, nearly 800 kilometers to the south, from the quarries of Aswan. Granite blocks are cut from the rock using stone tools and copper chisels. Then they are moved to the Nile, loaded onto boats, and floated downstream toward Giza. This journey takes weeks, but eventually the granite reaches the construction site. These massive blocks will form the king's chamber deep inside the pyramid. While stone is being gathered, another enormous task unfolds: the organization of labor. The Great Pyramid cannot be built by a few hundred workers. It requires thousands, perhaps tens of thousands. Egypt's government begins organizing labor teams from across the country. Many of these workers are farmers. During the Nile flood season, their fields are underwater. Farming must pause. So these farmers travel to the pyramid construction site, where they contribute labor to the king's monument. They work in rotating shifts, teams organized under different overseers. Each team has a name. Some teams proudly call themselves things like the Friends of Khufu. These names are sometimes written on the stones themselves, marks left behind by workers who helped build the pyramid. Archaeologists have discovered the remains of a large settlement near the pyramid site, a workers' village. There, the builders of the pyramid once lived. The village included bakeries, breweries, sleeping quarters, and storage rooms for grain and supplies. Evidence suggests workers were well fed. Their diet included bread, beer, fish, onions, garlic, and occasionally meat. Medical facilities also existed. Doctors treated injuries from quarry work and stone lifting. This evidence tells us something important. The builders of the pyramid were not slaves. They were organized workers, laborers serving the king and the state. Their work was demanding, but it was part of a system that supported them with food, shelter, and care. And so, the preparations for building the Great Pyramid continue. Quarries open. Boats carry stone along the Nile. Workers arrive from across Egypt. The desert plateau grows busier with each passing day. Soon, the first stones will be placed. The foundation will begin to rise, and the monument that Khufu imagined will slowly take shape. A mountain of stone built by thousands of hands, rising from the desert floor toward the sky. But that moment, when the first blocks are set in place, belongs to the next part of our story. For now, the wind moves gently across the Giza plateau. Survey ropes stretch across the sand, and the builders of Egypt prepare for the greatest construction project of the ancient world. Morning arrives slowly over the desert. The sun rises above the eastern horizon. Light spreads across the Giza plateau. The limestone ground begins to glow in warm gold. And below the plateau, the waters of the Nile move quietly through the valley. Boats drift along the river. Farmers begin their work in the fields. But high above the fertile valley, the desert plateau has become something very different. A place of movement, a place of planning, a place where thousands of people now gather every day because the great project of Khufu has begun, the building of the Great Pyramid. At first, the construction moves slowly, very slowly, because the first layer of stones must be perfect. Workers bring limestone blocks from the nearby quarry. The stones are rough when they arrive, edges uneven, surfaces dusty from cutting. Stonemasons carefully shape them. They use copper chisels, wooden mallets, and stone hammers made from hard dolerite. These tools may seem simple, but in the hands of skilled workers, they are capable of remarkable precision. The stones are shaped until they fit tightly against one another. When two blocks are placed side by side, the gap between them can be thinner than a finger. This careful shaping ensures the pyramid will remain stable for thousands of years. The first stones are laid directly onto the prepared bedrock. Overseers watch carefully. Scribes record deliveries of stone. Workers coordinate their movements in teams. Some pull sledges, some guide ropes, others position wooden rollers and levers. The first course of stone begins to form, a line of blocks stretching across the desert floor, then another and another. The pyramid begins not as a mountain, but as a low platform of stone, a foundation upon which everything else will rise. Moving these stones requires careful teamwork. Each block may weigh 2 or 3 tons. Some weigh far more. Workers place the stones onto wooden sledges. These sledges are dragged across the desert surface, but the sand creates friction. Pulling heavy stones across dry sand is difficult, so the workers use a clever technique. They pour water onto the sand in front of the sledges. The wet sand becomes firmer, smoother, and easier for the sledges to slide across. A wall painting discovered in ancient Egypt even shows workers pouring water ahead of a stone sledge. An elegant solution, simple, effective, and repeated thousands of times during the construction of the pyramid. The sledges move slowly. Dozens of workers pull each rope, their footsteps steady, their movements coordinated. An overseer walks beside them, calling instructions, keeping the pace. The stone glides forward across the wet sand, inch by inch, until it reaches the base of the growing structure. There, another group of workers waits. Using wooden levers and careful positioning, they guide the block into place. Once positioned, the stone becomes part of the pyramid, one of millions. As construction continues, the base of the pyramid begins to grow wider and taller. Each layer of stone is called a course. Course after course rises from the desert floor. The structure slowly takes shape. At first, the pyramid resembles a giant staircase, layered platforms stacked one above another. But this is only temporary. Later, smooth casing stones will cover the exterior. transforming the stepped shape into the smooth, triangular form we associate with pyramids today. For now, the builders focus only on raising the structure higher, stone by stone. Transporting materials to the site becomes a constant activity. Along the Nile River, boats arrive daily. Some carry limestone blocks. Others carry food supplies, grain, vegetables, fish, beer. All the provisions needed to feed the thousands of workers living near the pyramid. Temporary harbors and canals connect the construction site to the river. Barges unload their cargo. Workers carry supplies toward the settlement. Life at the pyramid site becomes a carefully organized system. Everything planned, everything recorded, everything moving according to schedule. In the workers' village, life follows a steady rhythm. At sunrise, teams gather for the day's labor. They eat bread, drink beer, and prepare for work. Beer is not simply a drink. In ancient Egypt, it is a staple of daily nutrition. Thick, rich in calories. It provides energy for long hours of labor. Workers also eat onions and garlic, foods believed to strengthen the body. These simple meals sustain the thousands who labor on the pyramid. The village itself grows into a small city. Rows of sleeping quarters house the workers. Bakeries operate day and night. Large clay ovens produce hundreds of loaves of bread. Nearby, breweries ferment grain into beer. Storage buildings hold sacks of wheat and barley. Animal bones discovered by archaeologists suggest workers also ate meat, especially cattle and sheep. Evidence of medical care has also been found. Skeletal remains show healed bones, proof that injured workers received treatment and continued living. These discoveries tell us something important. The pyramid builders were valued members of the royal workforce. Their labor was essential to the king's great monument. Meanwhile, the pyramid itself continues to rise. Each new layer requires more planning, more coordination, more stone. Ramps begin to appear beside the growing structure. Large earthen ramps built from mud brick and rubble. These ramps allow workers to drag stones upward as the pyramid rises higher. The exact shape of these ramps remains a mystery even today. Some historians believe they ran straight up the side. Others believe they spiraled around the pyramid. Whatever their exact design, they were essential to lifting heavy blocks higher and higher. Without ramps, raising stones to such heights would have been impossible.
Above the busy construction site, the sky remains clear and bright. The desert wind moves softly across the plateau. The pyramid continues its slow rise, a monument taking shape through patience, through organization, through the labor of thousands of hands. And far away, inside the royal palace, King Khufu watches the progress of his eternal monument. A monument that will one day dominate the horizon. A monument built to last forever. But the greatest challenges of the construction still lie ahead, because as the pyramid grows taller, lifting stones becomes more difficult. Engineering becomes more complex. And the builders of Egypt must find new ways to raise their monument toward the sky. That moment, when the pyramid begins to tower above the desert, will come in the next part of our story. For now, The sound of hammer against stone continues. The sledges move slowly across the sand, and the Great Pyramid of Giza rises, one stone at a time. The desert wind moves quietly across the plateau. Morning light spreads over the rising structure. From a distance, the pyramid now appears as a broad mountain of stone. Not yet smooth, not yet complete, but already enormous. Thousands of limestone blocks now form its lower levels, each layer carefully aligned, each stone placed by human hands. And with every passing season, the monument of Khufu grows taller, higher above the sands of the Giza Plateau. The work of construction never stops. Teams of workers arrive before sunrise. They gather near the ramps that lead up the pyramid sides. Overseers organize the labor teams. Scribes record attendance. The work must be precise. Stone must arrive at the correct time. Food must be delivered daily. Tools must be maintained. Everything depends on careful coordination. At the center of this vast organization stands the Vizier of Egypt, the royal administrator believed to oversee the project, a man named Hemiunu. Hemiunu is one of the most powerful officials in the kingdom. He serves directly under the king. His duties include supervising royal construction, managing labor, and ensuring the flow of resources throughout the project. His tomb still exists today near the pyramids, a reminder of his importance in the royal court. As vizier, he likely coordinates the many administrators involved in building the pyramid, officials who oversee quarry operations, transport along the Nile, food distribution, and the organization of the workers' village. Through this system, the construction project becomes one of the most carefully managed efforts of the ancient world. At the construction site, the ramps grow longer and higher. These ramps are made from packed mud brick, broken stone, and desert rubble. They allow workers to drag heavy blocks upward along a gradual slope. The sledges carrying the stones move slowly. Teams of men pull thick ropes tied to the wooden runners. Their footsteps press into the sand. The sledges creak as the stone blocks slide forward. Occasionally, workers stop to pour water onto the ramp surface. The damp sand reduces friction, helping the heavy blocks glide more easily. These simple techniques make it possible to move stones weighing several tons. Each stone that reaches the top of the ramp is guided into place. Masons shape the blocks carefully. They chip away rough edges. They smooth surfaces with stone tools. The goal is always the same. Each block must fit tightly beside its neighbors. The builders do not use mortar between most stones. Instead, they rely on precision. Blocks placed so carefully that even today a knife blade cannot easily slide between them. This attention to detail gives the pyramid its extraordinary strength. As the pyramid rises, new challenges appear. The higher the structure grows, the more difficult it becomes to transport stones upward. Ramps must be extended. Work teams must coordinate more carefully. The weight of the structure presses downward on the lower layers. Engineers monitor the placement of stones, ensuring that each level remains stable. And deep inside the growing pyramid, another complex structure begins to form. Within the pyramid's interior, workers begin constructing corridors and chambers. These spaces will form the heart of the monument, the burial chambers of the king. Narrow passageways lead upward through the stone layers. One corridor slopes downward into the bedrock beneath the pyramid. Another rises toward a higher chamber. And deeper inside the pyramid, a magnificent corridor known today as the Grand Gallery begins to take shape. This gallery is tall and narrow, its walls angled inward, stone blocks placed with extraordinary precision. The Grand Gallery will eventually lead to the most important chamber in the pyramid, the burial chamber of the king himself.
This chamber will be built from granite, a stone far harder than limestone. Granite is not found near Giza. It must travel hundreds of kilometers from the south, from the ancient quarries near Aswan. There, workers cut massive blocks from the granite cliffs, using stone hammers and copper tools. The granite blocks are then transported to the Nile, loaded onto large barges, and floated north toward the pyramid construction site. This journey can take weeks, but eventually the granite reaches Giza, where workers prepare it for placement inside the pyramid. The granite blocks of the king's chamber are among the heaviest stones used in the pyramid. Some weigh more than 70 tons. Moving them into place requires careful planning, ramps, levers, and teams of experienced workers. Once positioned, these stones form the walls and ceiling of the chamber where the king's sarcophagus will rest. Above this chamber, additional granite slabs are placed to distribute the enormous weight of the pyramid. These structures are sometimes called relieving chambers. They protect the burial chamber from collapse beneath the immense mass of stone above. Even today, engineers admire the sophistication of this design. While construction continues high above, life in the workers' settlement follows its daily rhythm. Before dawn, bakeries begin preparing bread. Large clay ovens glow with heat. Workers grind grain into flour. Dough is shaped into loaves and placed inside the ovens. Nearby, breweries prepare beer. Grain is fermented in large clay jars, producing the thick, nutritious drink that sustains the laborers. Beer is part of nearly every meal, alongside bread, vegetables, fish from the Nile, and sometimes meat from cattle or sheep. These meals provide the energy needed for long hours of work. Medical workers also serve the construction community. Archaeological discoveries show that injured workers were treated, broken bones healed, cuts and wounds cared for. Doctors used herbal medicines, bandages made from linen, and practical knowledge passed down through generations. The pyramid builders were valuable members of the state workforce. Their health mattered, because the project depended on their labor. As months turn into years, the pyramid grows ever higher. Its broad base already dominates the plateau. Travelers along the Nile can see the structure from many kilometers away, a massive geometric mountain rising from the desert. For the people of Egypt, this monument represents the power of their king and the order of their civilization. A structure designed not just for the present, but for eternity. And yet, much work still remains. Millions of stones must still be placed. The outer casing of white limestone has not yet been installed, and the pyramid must rise even higher before reaching its final form. But the vision of Khufu is becoming real, stone by stone, layer by layer. The Great Pyramid of Giza continues its slow ascent toward the sky. And in the quiet desert, the sound of construction continues. Ropes tightening, sledges sliding, hammers striking stone, a rhythm of labor echoing across the plateau.
the work of thousands, creating one of the greatest monuments in human history. The pyramid now rises high above the desert floor. From the valley of the Nile, travelers can already see it in the distance. A vast structure growing slowly toward the sky. Layer upon layer of limestone blocks, carefully placed, carefully aligned. The monument of Khufu is no longer simply a plan. It is becoming a mountain of stone. And every day, thousands of workers return to the Giza plateau to continue the work. As the pyramid grows taller, the work becomes more demanding. Moving stones to the lower levels was difficult, but lifting stones to the upper levels is even harder. The ramps must grow longer, higher, more complex. Engineers adjust their designs. Workers carry mud brick and rubble to extend the ramps upward along the sides of the pyramid. The slope must remain gentle, otherwise the heavy sledges cannot be pulled. The ramp itself becomes a massive structure, almost like another pyramid leaning against the first. Teams of laborers gather at the base of the ramp. Each team grips thick ropes tied to the wooden sledges. The stone blocks rest on the runners, heavy, silent, waiting. When the overseer gives the signal, the workers lean forward. The ropes tighten. Feet press into the sand. Slowly, the sledges begin to move, upward along the ramp, inch by inch, step by step. It is exhausting work, but the teams move in rhythm, their strength combined, their movements coordinated. A stone that weighs several tons begins its slow journey upward toward the growing summit of the pyramid.
Above them, masons wait. These skilled workers shape the stones before placing them. Their tools are simple: copper chisels, wooden mallets, and heavy stone pounding balls made from dolerite. With these tools, they refine the shape of each block, smoothing the surfaces, trimming edges, ensuring the stones will fit tightly together. The precision of their work is remarkable. Even today, modern engineers studying the pyramid are amazed by how closely the stones fit together. Thousands of years later, many joints remain almost perfectly aligned. Inside the pyramid, construction continues in secret chambers hidden from the outside world. The narrow corridors extend deeper into the structure, stone passageways leading upward and downward. Some passages lead nowhere. Others connect to chambers within the pyramid. One chamber lies deep below the structure, cut into the bedrock itself. Another lies higher within the pyramid. And further above, workers continue shaping the magnificent corridor known today as the Grand Gallery. This gallery rises high within the pyramid's interior. Its walls slope inward. Stone layers stacked carefully along each side. The ceiling climbs upward in a long, narrow passage, every block placed with extraordinary precision. The Grand Gallery will guide the burial procession toward the king's final chamber. The king's chamber itself is now nearing completion. Its walls are made of massive granite blocks brought from the distant quarries of Aswan. Granite is incredibly hard, far harder than the limestone used for most of the pyramid. Shaping these stones requires patience and skill. Workers use pounding stones to chip away the surface, gradually shaping the blocks into smooth, rectangular forms. Each block weighs many tons, and yet they must fit together with great accuracy.
Inside this chamber, the sarcophagus of the king will eventually rest. A stone coffin carved from granite, waiting silently for the day when the pharaoh's body will be placed within it. Above the king's chamber, the builders construct something extraordinary. A series of chambers stacked above the burial room. These spaces are not meant for people. They serve a different purpose. They protect the chamber below. The pyramid above weighs millions of tons. Without support, this immense weight could crush the burial chamber. So the engineers place enormous granite beams above it, creating layers that redirect the pressure of the pyramid's mass. These chambers quietly protect the king's resting place, hidden deep inside the stone mountain. Outside the pyramid, the life of the workers continues with steady rhythm. The settlement near the construction site has grown larger. Rows of mud brick buildings form narrow streets. Cooking fires burn beside the houses. Large ovens bake bread for hundreds of workers each day. Nearby, breweries ferment grain into thick beer. This drink is not only for celebration, it is a vital source of nourishment. Workers receive daily rations of bread and beer, enough to sustain them through long hours of labor. Fish from the Nile is common, so are onions and garlic, foods believed to strengthen the body. Archaeologists studying the remains of this settlement have discovered bones of cattle and sheep, evidence that meat was sometimes provided as well, especially for skilled workers and overseers. The settlement also includes workshops. Carpenters repair sledges and wooden tools. Potters produce jars used to store food and water. Metal workers sharpen copper tools. Doctors care for injured workers. Even small temples exist, where priests offer prayers for the safety of the workers and the success of the king's monument. The pyramid project is not just construction. It is an entire community. Thousands of people living and working together for a single purpose. Back at the pyramid itself, the structure continues to rise. Layer after layer climbs toward the sky. From the distance, the pyramid now dominates the landscape, its stepped shape towering above the plateau. Travelers along the Nile pause to watch. The monument can be seen from far away, a symbol of the power of Egypt and the ambition of its king. But the structure still lacks its final beauty, because the outer surface of the pyramid remains unfinished. The rough core blocks are visible. The smooth white casing stones have not yet been placed. Those stones will transform the pyramid into something extraordinary. A brilliant geometric shape reflecting sunlight across the desert. But that stage of construction still lies ahead.
For now, the work continues. The sledges move, the ramps climb higher, the masons shape their stones, and the pyramid of Khufu grows ever taller. A monument rising slowly through patience and determination, built by thousands of workers, guided by architects and overseers, and watched by a king whose vision reaches far beyond his own lifetime. Because the pyramid is not only a tomb, it is a message carved into stone. A message that will endure for thousands of years, long after the builders themselves are gone. And the desert winds continue to whisper across the plateau. The pyramid now towers high above the desert. From the green fields beside the Nile, people can see it rising in the distance. A vast,
step mountain of stone, slowly growing larger with each passing season. On the Giza Plateau, the work never truly stops. Thousands of workers move across the construction site. Some haul stones, some shape blocks with chisels and hammerstones. Others repair ramps and sledges. And all of them work beneath the watchful administration of the king. The monument of Khufu continues its slow ascent toward the sky. But the pyramid itself is only one part of the great project. Around the monument, a sacred landscape is also taking shape. Egyptian builders do not see the pyramid as an isolated structure. It is the center of a carefully planned complex, a place where religion, ceremony, and royal authority come together. At the base of the plateau, closer to the Nile, workers begin building what will later be called the Valley Temple. This temple stands near the river. It is here that the body of the king will eventually arrive after his death. Priests will perform purification rituals. The mummy will be prepared for its final journey. From this temple, a long stone road called a causeway will lead upward toward the pyramid. The causeway stretches across the desert, a wide, elevated passage connecting the Valley Temple to the pyramid complex above. Its walls are built of limestone, its floor paved with stone slabs. During royal funerals, priests and attendants will walk this road, carrying offerings, burning incense, chanting prayers, guiding the king's spirit toward his eternal resting place. But that day lies far in the future. For now, the causeway serves another purpose. It allows supplies to move from the Nile harbor toward the pyramid construction site. Boats arrive along canals connected to the river. Stone blocks, food supplies, timber, copper tools, all unloaded at the harbor and carried up the causeway toward the growing pyramid. The scale of organization required for this project is astonishing. Administrators keep detailed records of supplies. Scribes sit in shaded shelters beside the construction site. Papyrus scrolls spread before them. They record the arrival of shipments, the number of workers present, the amount of grain distributed, the daily rations of bread and beer. These records allow the royal government to maintain control over the entire project. Nothing is left to chance. Everything is planned. Everything accounted for. Life among the workers continues in steady rhythm. At sunrise, the settlement begins to stir. Smoke rises from ovens. Bakers prepare fresh bread. Large clay jars of beer are carried from the breweries. Workers gather for their morning meal. They sit together on low stone benches, talking quietly, eating bread dipped in beer. Some eat onions and garlic. Simple food, but rich in energy, enough to sustain long hours of labor beneath the Egyptian sun. Once the meal is finished, the workers return to the pyramid, their teams already assigned, their tasks already known. The workforce is divided into organized groups. Each group works under an overseer. These teams sometimes leave inscriptions on the stones they place, names scratched into the rock, marks that have survived thousands of years. Some of these team names are surprisingly cheerful, names like Friends of Khufu or Drunkards of Menkaure. These names remind us that the workers were not anonymous slaves. They were organized labor teams, proud of their work, working together under the authority of the state. Some workers are skilled craftsmen, stonemasons, surveyors, carpenters. These men spend years learning their trades. They shape the stones with great care. Their experience ensures the pyramid remains stable. Other workers perform heavy labor, dragging sledges, carrying tools, clearing rubble from the construction ramps. Many of these workers are farmers from villages along the Nile. During the flood season, their fields lie beneath water. Farming must pause, so they travel to Giza, where their labor serves the king's monument. After the flood waters retreat, they return home to their farms. This system allows Egypt to gather a large workforce without disrupting agriculture.
Once the stone reaches the upper level, skilled masons take over. They adjust the block's position, using wooden levers, stone wedges, and careful measurements. The block must align perfectly with the stones beside it. Any error could weaken the structure. But the Egyptian masons are highly experienced. Their craftsmanship has been refined through decades of pyramid construction. The block settles into place. Another stone added to the monument. The higher the pyramid grows, the more impressive it becomes. From the valley below, the structure appears almost unreal, a giant shape rising from the desert, its sides sloping smoothly upward, each layer perfectly aligned with the one below. Even now, before the final casing stones are added, the pyramid commands attention. It represents the authority of the pharaoh, the wealth of the kingdom, and the ability of Egypt to organize thousands of workers toward a single goal. Within the pyramid complex, construction of the surrounding structures also continues. The valley temple near the Nile grows larger, its massive limestone blocks forming thick walls and courtyards. Priests will one day perform rituals here, preparing the body of the king for burial. Further up the plateau, the mortuary temple beside the pyramid begins to take shape. This temple will serve as a place of worship long after the king is gone. Priests will bring offerings, food, incense, wine. Prayers will be spoken in honor of the deceased ruler, ensuring his spirit continues to live in the afterlife. Near the pyramid, workers dig deep pits into the bedrock, long, narrow chambers carved into the desert rock. These pits will hold something remarkable. Wooden boats, full-sized ships built for the pharaoh's journey into the next world. Egyptians believe the sun god travels across the sky in a celestial boat, and they believe the king will one day join that journey. These ships will carry his spirit across the heavens. One such vessel, known today as the Khufu ship, will remain hidden beside the pyramid for more than 4,000 years, until archaeologists rediscover it in modern times. Back in the workers' village, life continues with quiet regularity. The settlement has grown into a busy community. Bakeries produce hundreds of loaves each day. Breweries fill clay jars with fermented grain. The smell of baking bread drifts through the streets. Workers gather in shaded courtyards, eating their midday meal. Bread, beer, fish, and vegetables. Some workers rest beneath simple shelters. Others sharpen tools for the next shift of labor. The project moves forward steadily because every worker knows his role. Some men are quarry workers, cutting limestone from the bedrock. Others transport stones from the harbor. Some are carpenters, repairing sledges and tools. Some are stonemasons, responsible for shaping the pyramid's outer surfaces. Others serve as scribes, recording deliveries and supplies. The pyramid project is not just physical labor. It is an enormous system of organization, a machine powered by human effort, guided by administrators,
and supported by the agricultural wealth of Egypt. Meanwhile, the summit of the pyramid draws closer. Each new level brings the structure nearer to completion. At its final height, the pyramid will reach approximately 147 meters, making it the tallest structure on Earth. And it will remain the tallest building in the world for nearly 4,000 years. No cathedral, no tower, no skyscraper will surpass it until the modern age. For the ancient Egyptians, this monument represents the ultimate expression of royal power, a structure built not merely for one lifetime, but for eternity. Soon, the final layers will be placed. The pyramid's peak will be completed, and the smooth casing stones will transform the structure into its finished form. A brilliant white monument reflecting sunlight across the desert. But before that moment arrives, one final stage of construction remains. The finishing of the pyramid's exterior, and the placing of the final stone at the very top. The stone that will crown the monument of Khufu. A monument that will endure for thousands of years, standing silent beneath the desert sky. The pyramid now rises almost to its final height. From the fertile lands beside the Nile, its shape dominates the horizon. A vast stone mountain built by human hands. Layer upon layer of limestone blocks stacked with remarkable precision. Each course slightly smaller than the one beneath it, so that the structure narrows gradually as it climbs toward the sky. For the workers of Egypt, this monument has become part of daily life. Many of them have labored here for years. Some arrived as young men. Now their hair has begun to turn gray. Yet the pyramid continues to rise, stone by stone, toward its final form.
Up on the higher levels of the structure, the air feels different. The wind moves more freely. From this height, the workers can see far across the Nile Valley. Green fields stretch along the riverbanks. Small villages lie scattered across the farmland. Boats move slowly along the water, carrying grain, stone, and supplies. From this height, the world of Egypt appears peaceful, ordered, balanced, just as the ancient Egyptians believed the world should be, maintained by the authority of the pharaoh, and embodied in monuments like this one. The ramps that once allowed stones to be dragged up the pyramid now wind steeply along its sides. These ramps are constantly adjusted as the structure grows. Workers add new layers of mud brick and rubble, extending the ramp upward, allowing sledges to reach higher levels. But moving stones at this height is slower than before. The working space becomes narrower. Each step must be carefully controlled. A single mistake could send a stone sliding down the ramp. So the workers move with patience, pulling together, guiding the blocks carefully into place. Meanwhile, another group of craftsmen begins working on the pyramid's exterior. These men shape the casing stones, the smooth white limestone that will cover the pyramid's outer surface. The stone comes from the quarries of Tura. It is much finer than the local limestone used for the pyramid's core. When polished, it becomes brilliantly white, almost glowing beneath the Egyptian sun. Each casing stone is cut at a slight angle, so that when placed against the pyramid's sides, they form a smooth, continuous surface. The masons work carefully, polishing the stone,
smoothing its edges, preparing it for installation. Transporting these casing stones requires great care. They arrive by boat along the Nile, loaded onto barges, floating slowly toward the harbor near Giza. From there, they travel up the causeway, carried or dragged by teams of workers. Once they reach the pyramid, they are lifted along the ramps, carefully positioned along the outer edges of the structure. One by one, the rough steps of the pyramid begin to disappear, replaced by smooth surfaces of gleaming white stone. Under the bright Egyptian sky, the pyramid begins to shine, reflecting sunlight across the desert plateau. The transformation is remarkable. Where once the pyramid appeared as a giant staircase of rough blocks, it now begins to look like a perfect geometric form. 4 smooth triangular faces, each sloping upward toward a single point. The sides of the pyramid meet the horizon with mathematical precision. Even today, modern measurements reveal how accurately the builders shaped the structure. Each side is almost exactly the same length, the angles nearly identical. Achieving this level of accuracy without modern instruments required remarkable skill. While the outer surface is being completed, the interior passages are sealed. Corridors once used by workers are carefully closed. Large stone blocks slide into place, hidden mechanisms designed to protect the burial chamber. These passages will remain hidden for thousands of years, protecting the king's tomb deep within the pyramid. Inside the king's chamber, the granite sarcophagus waits silently, carved from a single block of stone, its interior empty, waiting for the day when the body of Khufu will be placed within it. Outside, the final stages of construction approach. The pyramid now stands near its full height. Only the uppermost layers remain unfinished. These stones are smaller, easier to lift, but placing them requires extreme precision because they will form the summit of the structure, the very top of the pyramid. A small stone known as the pyramidion will eventually crown the monument. This capstone may have been covered in gold or electrum, a metal that shines brightly in sunlight. If so, the peak of the pyramid would have flashed like a star above the desert, visible from many kilometers in every direction, a symbol of divine power, connecting the king with the heavens. Down in the workers' village, life continues much as it has for years. Bakeries still produce bread, breweries still prepare beer, doctors still treat injured workers. The settlement hums with quiet activity. For many people here, the pyramid has been the center of their world, a place where they have lived and worked for much of their lives. They have watched it grow from a flat foundation in the desert into the largest structure ever built by human hands. And now, they are watching its final shape emerge.
Soon, the last stones will be placed. The ramps will be dismantled. The workers will leave the plateau, and the pyramid will stand alone in the desert. A monument completed after decades of effort. A structure designed to last forever. But before the builders depart, one final stage remains. The ceremonial completion of the monument, and the preparation of the surrounding temples for the king's eventual burial. That moment, when the Great Pyramid stands finished beneath the Egyptian sun, will come in the next part of our story. The pyramid now stands nearly complete. From the valley of the Nile,
Its immense shape dominates the horizon. 4 smooth sides rising toward the sky, each face angled with remarkable precision. The monument of Khufu has reached its final height. For decades, workers have carried stones across the Giza plateau. They have shaped limestone, dragged sledges up ramps, placed millions of blocks one above another. And now, their work is nearly finished. High above the desert, a small group of craftsmen gathers near the pyramid's summit. The uppermost stones are being placed. These stones are smaller than the massive blocks used in the lower levels, but their placement must be even more precise, because they form the peak of the pyramid, the point where the 4 sides meet. Workers guide the final blocks into position, carefully adjusting them with levers, ensuring each surface aligns perfectly with the others. The shape of the pyramid narrows until only a small platform remains at the top. Here, the last stone will be placed. The final stone is known as the pyramidion, a capstone that crowns the monument. In ancient Egypt, such stones were often polished carefully. Some may have been covered with thin layers of gold or electrum, a shimmering metal made from gold and silver. If the pyramidion of Khufu's pyramid was covered in such material, it would have reflected sunlight brilliantly, the tip of the pyramid glowing like a beacon above the desert, a symbol of the sun god and of the king's journey to the heavens. When the pyramidion is finally set into place, the structure becomes complete. For the first time, the Great Pyramid stands in its full form. Smooth white limestone surfaces, 4 perfect triangular faces, a peak shining beneath the Egyptian sun. At the time of its completion, the pyramid rises about 147 meters high, making it the tallest structure on Earth. No building will surpass its height for nearly 4,000 years. From the Nile Valley, travelers can see the monument from many kilometers away, a vast, shining pyramid rising from the desert plateau. But the pyramid itself is only one part of the royal complex. Around the monument, the final structures continue to take shape. At the base of the pyramid, workers complete the mortuary temple. This temple stands beside the pyramid's eastern side. It will serve as a place where priests conduct daily rituals for the king after his death. Inside the temple, altars are prepared. Statues of the pharaoh will eventually be placed there. Priests will offer food and incense, maintaining the spiritual presence of the king in the world of the living. Further down the plateau, the long stone causeway stretches toward the Nile. This raised pathway connects the pyramid complex with the valley temple below. The causeway may have been decorated with carved reliefs, scenes showing the achievements of the king, images of offerings, processions, and divine ceremonies. During the king's funeral, priests and attendants will walk along this causeway, guiding the royal burial procession from the valley temple to the pyramid above. Near the pyramid, the deep boat pits are carefully sealed. Inside them rest the great wooden ships buried for the king's journey into the afterlife. One of these vessels, known today as the Khufu ship, will remain hidden beneath the desert for thousands of years. The ship is long, over 40 meters in length, built with remarkable craftsmanship. Egyptians believed such boats would carry the king across the heavens, just as the sun god Ra traveled across the sky each day in a celestial boat. Nearby, smaller pyramids rise beside the great monument. These are built for members of the royal family, queens, royal relatives. Their pyramids are smaller, but constructed with the same care. Together, they form a royal cemetery on the Giza Plateau, a sacred landscape dedicated to the eternal life of Egypt's rulers. Meanwhile, life in the workers' settlement begins to change. The great construction project is coming to an end. Many workers prepare to return to their villages along the Nile. Farmers will go back to their fields. Craftsmen will return to their workshops. Administrators will close their records. The bakeries and breweries that once served thousands of laborers will grow quieter. The community that grew around the pyramid will slowly dissolve, its purpose fulfilled.
For decades, this plateau has been filled with activity. The sound of hammer against stone, the creaking of sledges, voices calling instructions across the ramps. But now, those sounds begin to fade. The ramps are dismantled, unused materials removed. The pyramid remains, but the workers who built it slowly depart, leaving behind only the monument they created. The Great Pyramid now stands alone on the plateau, its white limestone casing reflecting the sun, its peak gleaming high above the desert. Below it, the temples and causeways wait silently, prepared for the day when the king's burial will take place. But that moment has not yet arrived. The pharaoh Khufu still lives, still rules Egypt. And somewhere along the Nile, life continues beneath the steady rhythm of the river. The pyramid waits patiently, a monument prepared for eternity. The great monument now stands complete. High above the desert, the pyramid rises with quiet certainty. Its smooth limestone sides catch the sunlight, brilliant white beneath the Egyptian sky. At its peak, the shining capstone reflects the morning sun. From the valley of the Nile, the monument appears almost unreal. A perfect geometric mountain, built not by nature, but by human hands. The Pyramid of Khufu now dominates the Giza Plateau, a structure built to endure for eternity. Years pass quietly across the kingdom of Egypt. The pharaoh continues to rule. Government officials administer the land. Farmers cultivate the fertile fields along the Nile. Priests conduct rituals inside temples. And far away on the desert plateau, the pyramid stands silently beneath the sun, waiting. Because the pyramid was never meant to be a monument alone. It was built for a moment that would one day come, the death of the king. In ancient Egypt, death was not seen as an ending. It was a transformation, a journey from the world of the living into the world of the gods. Egyptians believed that every person possessed several spiritual elements. The Ka, the life force that continued after death. The Ba, the personality that could travel between worlds. And the Ak, the transformed spirit that joined the divine realm. For this journey to succeed, the body had to be preserved, the tomb had to be protected, and offerings had to be made to sustain the spirit. For a pharaoh, these rituals were even more important, because the king was believed to become divine after death. When the time finally comes, the royal court prepares carefully. Priests gather in sacred chambers. Incense burns slowly in bronze bowls. The body of the king is carried to a special place where the process of mummification begins. This process takes many weeks. The body is carefully preserved using linen wrappings and sacred oils. Every step follows ancient religious traditions. Priests recite prayers. Symbols are drawn upon amulets placed within the wrappings. Protective spells meant to guide the king safely into the afterlife. When the process is complete, the body of the pharaoh rests within a beautifully decorated coffin, prepared for its final journey. The funeral procession begins near the Nile, at the valley temple beside the river. Priests gather. Officials stand in silence. Musicians play soft ceremonial instruments. The coffin of the king is placed upon a ceremonial boat. Just as the king once traveled along the Nile during his life, his body now makes one final journey. The boat moves slowly through the water, approaching the harbor near the pyramid complex. When the coffin reaches the valley temple, the procession continues on foot. Attendants lift the coffin carefully. Priests lead the way, carrying incense, chanting sacred hymns. The funeral procession moves slowly along the long stone causeway, the road that connects the valley temple to the pyramid itself. Along the causeway, walls may display carved reliefs, scenes of offerings, images of the king, symbols of divine protection. The procession climbs steadily upward toward the pyramid. At the summit of the plateau, the mortuary temple waits beside the great monument. Here, final rituals are performed. Priests speak prayers to guide the king's spirit. Offerings of food and drink are placed upon altars. Incense smoke drifts slowly into the air. The body of the pharaoh is prepared for its final resting place, deep inside the pyramid, within the hidden chamber built from massive blocks of granite.
The burial chamber lies silent in darkness, deep within the stone mountain, its walls made from enormous granite blocks brought from the distant quarries of Aswan. The chamber is cool, still, protected by the weight of millions of stones above it. The granite sarcophagus waits at the center of the room, a massive stone coffin carved from a single block of granite. For years, it has remained empty. Now, the coffin receives its occupant. The body of the king is placed within the sarcophagus, accompanied by sacred objects, amulets, offerings, symbols meant to protect the king during his journey into the next world. Once the burial is complete, the chamber is sealed. Stone blocks slide into place within the corridors. Passages are closed. Hidden mechanisms lock sections of the pyramid, protecting the burial chamber from intruders. Above the chamber, the immense weight of the pyramid presses downward, but the granite beams placed by the builders protect the chamber below, their design distributing the pressure safely through the stone structure. The tomb is now secure, hidden deep within the pyramid, guarded by the monument itself. Outside, the desert wind moves across the plateau. Priests continue their rituals in the mortuary temple. Offerings will be made here for generations. Food, wine, incense. Prayers spoken daily for the spirit of the king, ensuring that the pharaoh continues to live in the afterlife. As centuries pass, new kings will build their own pyramids nearby, the pyramids of Khafra and Menkaure. But none will surpass the scale of the monument built by Khufu. His pyramid remains the greatest, the tallest, the most ambitious monument of ancient Egypt. The workers who built it have long since returned to their homes. The administrators who organized the project have completed their duties. The masons, the quarry workers, the carpenters, the scribes. All of them played a part in creating this monument. Their names mostly forgotten, but their work remains, carved into the stone itself, a testament to the civilization that built it. And beneath the endless sky of the Egyptian desert, the Great Pyramid stands in silence, a monument built 4,500 years ago, still rising above the sands of time, waiting, watching, as centuries slowly pass. The years pass quietly across the land of Egypt. Seasons follow one another. The Nile floods, the Nile recedes. Fields are planted, harvests are gathered. Life continues along the river as it always has. And high above the fertile valley, the pyramid remains, silent, still, standing upon the Giza plateau. The monument of Khufu now watches over the passing centuries. Generations of Egyptians grow up in the shadow of the pyramid. Children play in the villages along the Nile. Farmers work their fields beneath the sun. Boats glide across the river. And always, in the distance, the Great Pyramid rises above the desert. For the people of Egypt, it is simply part of the landscape, a reminder of the power of their ancient kings, a monument that seems as permanent as the desert itself. New pharaohs rule after Khufu. His successors continue the tradition of pyramid building. Nearby, another great pyramid rises, built for the king Khafre. His pyramid stands slightly smaller, but appears taller because it is built upon higher ground. Beside it, the enormous statue known today as the Great Sphinx of Giza is carved from the bedrock. The face of a king, the body of a lion, watching eternally over the plateau. Later still, another pyramid appears, built for the king Menkaure, smaller than the others, but still impressive. Together, these monuments form the Great Pyramid Complex of Giza, a royal cemetery unlike any other in the ancient world. As centuries pass, Egypt itself begins to change. New dynasties rise, new temples are built, different rulers govern the land. Yet the pyramids remain. The smooth white casing stones of the Great Pyramid continue to shine beneath the sun, reflecting light across the desert. Travelers approaching the Nile Valley can see the monument from far away, a brilliant triangle of white stone rising above the sands. For many centuries, the pyramid remains exactly as its builders intended, a perfect geometric monument.
But time slowly changes even the greatest structures. Thousands of years pass. Wind and sand move across the plateau. Storms strike the desert. And eventually, some of the outer casing stones begin to loosen. Earthquakes shake the region. Later civilizations arrive, and many of the smooth limestone casing stones are removed, used to build walls and buildings in nearby cities. The pyramid gradually loses its bright outer covering. The smooth white surface disappears, revealing the rough limestone blocks beneath. The pyramid begins to look as it does today, stepped, weathered, ancient, yet still magnificent. Long after the pharaohs are gone, visitors from distant lands come to see the pyramid. Greek travelers arrive in Egypt. Among them is the historian Herodotus. Writing more than 2,000 years ago, he describes the pyramids in his histories. He records stories told by Egyptian priests, stories about the great construction project, about the thousands of workers, about the long years required to complete the monument. Some of these stories are exaggerated, but they reveal how deeply the pyramids impressed ancient visitors. Even then, the monuments were already thousands of years old. Centuries later, Roman travelers come to see the pyramids. They climb the massive stone blocks. They explore the desert plateau, and they marvel at the engineering skill of the ancient Egyptians. To them, The pyramids seem almost impossible, structures too large for human hands, yet built long before the rise of Rome itself. Even in the modern age, the pyramids continue to inspire curiosity. Archaeologists study the stones. Engineers measure the angles and dimensions. Researchers explore the hidden chambers within the structure. Discoveries continue to emerge. Ancient papyri describing the transport of stone, ruins of the workers' village, the buried boat of Khufu. Each discovery reveals another small piece of the story of how thousands of people came together to build one of the most extraordinary monuments ever created. Today, more than 4,500 years after its construction, the Great Pyramid still stands. It is the only surviving structure from the ancient list known as the Seven Wonders of the Ancient World. Empires have risen and fallen. Cities have disappeared, but the pyramid remains. Its stones still aligned with remarkable precision. Its base still anchored in the desert bedrock. A monument that has endured through millennia. And if you stand quietly on the plateau at sunset, you can still feel the presence of the ancient world. The wind moves gently across the sand. The shadows of the pyramid stretch slowly across the desert. And the monument of Khufu stands as it has for thousands of years, a silent witness to the passing of time, built by thousands of workers, guided by architects and administrators, and imagined by a king who wished to create something eternal. Stone by stone, layer by layer, across decades of careful labor, the Great Pyramid rose from the desert, and it remains there still, quiet beneath the Egyptian sky. Long after the builders have gone, long after the priests who once walked the temples have disappeared, the pyramid remains, silent beneath the vast desert sky. The monument of Khufu stands where it has stood for more than 4,000 years, its massive stones weathered by wind and sand, yet still firmly joined together, still holding the shape envisioned by the architects of ancient Egypt. On the Giza plateau, the world continues to change, but the pyramid hardly seems to notice. In the centuries after the Old Kingdom, Egypt itself slowly transforms. New rulers take the throne. Different dynasties rise and fall. Temples are built along the Nile. Cities expand and fade. Yet the pyramids remain visible from the river, their shapes rising above the desert horizon. Even thousands of years after their construction, the pyramids are already ancient monuments, relics of a distant age. The Egyptians who lived during later dynasties look upon them with the same sense of wonder we feel today. They know the pyramids were built by powerful kings of the distant past, kings whose names are still remembered, but whose time has long passed. Some later rulers attempt to imitate the Great Pyramids. They build smaller pyramids of their own, but none match the size or precision of the monument built by Khufu. The age of giant pyramids slowly comes to an end. Egyptian kings begin building their tombs in hidden valleys instead, buried deep in the cliffs of the desert, protected by secrecy rather than size. But the pyramids remain, standing where they have always stood, watching the slow passage of time.
Over the centuries, the desert winds carry fine sand across the plateau. Small dunes form between the monuments. Some temples become buried beneath drifting sand. The once bright limestone casing stones of the pyramid gradually disappear. Some fall due to earthquakes. Others are taken by later civilizations, used as building materials for mosques and houses in nearby cities. As the casing stones vanish, the pyramid reveals its inner layers, the rough limestone blocks that form its core. The monument loses its smooth white surface, but it does not lose its strength. The structure remains solid, its stones locked together through careful engineering. Visitors from distant lands continue to arrive. Scholars, travelers, merchants, each of them curious about the enormous monuments rising from the desert. Among the earliest writers to describe the pyramids is Herodotus. When he visits Egypt more than 2,000 years after the pyramid was built, he hears stories told by Egyptian priests, stories about the construction of the monument, about the thousands of workers who labored for many years, about the great wealth required to complete such a project. Some of the details he records are not entirely accurate, but his writings preserve the memory of the pyramids for future generations. Centuries later, Roman travelers visit the plateau. They climb the enormous stone steps, they explore the surrounding desert, and they marvel at the size of the monument. To them, the pyramid already seems impossibly ancient, a structure older than most civilizations they know, yet still standing with quiet dignity beneath the sun. Time continues its slow movement across the world. Empires rise, empires fall. New religions appear, languages change, cities grow and vanish. But the pyramid remains, its stones unmoved, its shape unchanged, even as thousands of years pass. In the modern era, scientists and archaeologists begin to study the pyramid more carefully. They measure its dimensions, they examine its internal passages, they search for clues about the lives of the people who built it. Nearby, they discover the remains of the workers' settlement, the bakeries, the breweries, the houses where the builders once lived. These discoveries reveal the human side of the pyramid story. The thousands of individuals who shaped the stones, pulled the sledges, prepared the food, and organized the enormous project. People whose names are mostly lost to history, but whose work remains visible in every stone of the monument. One of the most remarkable discoveries occurs in the 20th century. Near the base of the pyramid, archaeologists uncover a sealed pit, hidden beneath massive stone blocks. Inside the pit lies something extraordinary. A wooden ship, carefully disassembled and stored. This vessel becomes known as the Khufu ship. When archaeologists reconstruct the ship, they discover a magnificent boat more than 40 meters long, built with elegant craftsmanship. The ship had been buried beside the pyramid for thousands of years, waiting silently beneath the desert sand, perhaps intended to carry the spirit of the king across the heavens, just as Egyptian mythology described the sun god traveling across the sky in a sacred boat. Today, visitors from around the world travel to Egypt to see the pyramids. They walk across the plateau. They touch the ancient stones. They climb the lower blocks. And they stand in the shadow of the Great Pyramid, looking upward at the massive structure, trying to imagine how it was built, trying to understand the civilization that created it. For many people, the pyramid represents one of the greatest achievements in human history. A monument built without modern machinery, without steel tools, without modern engineering, yet constructed with precision that still impresses scientists today. And when the sun begins to set over the desert, the pyramid casts a long shadow across the plateau. The sky turns gold, then deep orange, and finally violet as evening approaches. The winds move softly across the sand, just as they have for thousands of years. The pyramid stands quietly beneath the fading light, a monument to human ambition, to careful planning, to the labor of thousands, and to the dream of a king who wished to build something that would last forever. More than 4,500 years later, that dream still stands, silent, unmoving, watching the endless flow of time beneath the desert sky.
Even today, when people stand beside the Great Pyramid, they often ask a simple question. How did ancient people build something so enormous? How did workers without modern machines, without steel tools, without cranes or engines, raise millions of stones into a monument taller than any building of their time? The answer lies not in a single secret, but in many small pieces of knowledge. Careful planning, patient labor, and the organization of an entire civilization. Because the pyramid was not built in a single moment. It was built through years of steady work, through the efforts of thousands of people, each one contributing a small part to the whole. At the center of this enormous effort stood the government of ancient Egypt. During the reign of Khufu, Egypt possessed one of the most organized administrations of the ancient world. Officials recorded taxes, they counted livestock, they measured harvests, they tracked shipments along the Nile. All of these records were written by scribes, men trained to read and write the complex symbols of Egyptian hieroglyphs. Scribes were among the most respected members of society. Their work allowed the kingdom to function smoothly. Without their careful records, a project as vast as the pyramid could never have been managed. The building of the pyramid required enormous resources: stone, food, tools, timber, cloth. Everything had to be supplied continuously from many different regions of Egypt. Farmers along the Nile produced grain, which was stored in large state granaries. Some of this grain fed the workers building the pyramid. Other supplies traveled along the river by boat. Egypt's river system served as a natural highway, allowing goods to move efficiently across the country. Boats carried limestone, granite, copper tools, and supplies for the workers' village. The Nile was the lifeline of the entire project. Copper tools played an important role in the construction. Ancient Egyptian craftsmen worked copper into chisels and blades. Although copper is softer than modern steel, it was still capable of cutting limestone when used carefully. Workers frequently sharpened their tools. Stone hammers made from hard rock were also used to break larger pieces. These tools were simple, but effective, and they allowed skilled masons to shape blocks with remarkable precision. The builders relied not on advanced technology, but on patience and craftsmanship. Wood was another valuable material. Egypt did not possess large forests, so timber was often imported from distant lands. Wood was used to build sledges, levers, scaffolding, and parts of the ramps used to move stones. Carpenters working at the construction site repaired damaged tools and sledges, ensuring the work could continue smoothly. Even small pieces of wood played an important role in the project, helping workers move blocks weighing many tons. The labor system of ancient Egypt was carefully organized. Many workers were farmers who lived along the Nile. During the annual flood season, their fields were underwater. Agriculture temporarily paused. This allowed large numbers of people to travel to construction sites, where they worked on royal projects, including pyramid construction. These workers did not remain permanently at the site.
They served for periods of time before returning home to their villages. Other workers remained longer, especially skilled craftsmen, stonemasons, surveyors, carpenters, and administrators. Together they formed the workforce that built the pyramid. The workers lived in organized settlements near the pyramid site. Archaeologists have discovered the remains of these villages. Rows of mud brick buildings, bread ovens, storage rooms, and workshops. The settlement functioned almost like a small city. Food was distributed regularly. Workers received rations of bread and beer. These foods provided energy for long hours of labor. Fish from the Nile added protein to their diet. Onions and garlic were common foods as well. Some evidence even shows that cattle and sheep were occasionally slaughtered to feed the workforce. Meals were simple, but nourishing, and enough to sustain the thousands of people working on the project. Within the workers' community, life was not entirely consumed by labor. In the evenings, workers rested beside their homes. Some talked with friends. Some repaired tools. Others simply relaxed after a long day of work. The village contained places where workers could gather, and priests sometimes performed small religious rituals. Even those who built the pyramid believed strongly in the gods, just as the king did. Religion was part of daily life throughout Egypt, guiding both rulers and workers alike.
Meanwhile, the pyramid itself continued to symbolize the unity of the kingdom. It required contributions from every region of Egypt: stone from quarries, food from farms, tools from workshops, labor from villages. All of these resources flowed toward the Giza Plateau, where they were transformed into the monument that still stands today. The pyramid was more than a tomb. It was a national project, a reflection of Egypt's ability to organize its people and resources toward a shared goal. And as the years passed, the Great Pyramid became something even greater than the vision of a single king. It became a symbol, a reminder of the civilization that built it, of the thousands of people who shaped its stones, of the planners who measured its angles, of the workers who pulled sledges across the desert sand. Every stone holds part of that story, a story written not in words, but in the enduring architecture of ancient Egypt. Now, as the sun slowly sets over the desert plateau, the pyramid stands quietly beneath the fading light, its shadow stretching across the sands. The winds whisper softly against its ancient stones, and the monument of Khufu continues to stand watch over the Nile Valley, just as it has for more than 4,000 years, a silent witness to history, a monument to patience, and to the remarkable achievements of the ancient Egyptians. The desert has grown quiet again. The sound of construction has faded. The ramps that once climbed along the sides of the pyramid have been removed. The workers who pulled the sledges have returned to their villages along the Nile. And now, the Great Pyramid stands alone upon the Giza Plateau, its massive stones arranged with extraordinary precision, its shape rising toward the sky. The monument built for Khufu has entered a new stage of its existence. It is no longer a construction site. It has become something else, a sacred place, a monument of eternity. Priests now serve within the temples beside the pyramid. Each day they perform rituals in honor of the king. Food offerings are placed upon stone altars: bread, beer, wine, fruits, and vegetables. These offerings are not meant for the living. They are meant for the spirit of the king. The Egyptians believed that the spirit continued to exist after death, and that it required nourishment. Through these rituals, the priests ensured that the king's spirit remained strong in the afterlife. Inside the mortuary temple beside the pyramid, statues of the king stand quietly in shadowed chambers. These statues represent the pharaoh in his divine form. If the king's spirit ever needed a place to return, these statues could serve as a physical vessel, allowing the spirit to inhabit the world of the living once again. Priests move silently through the temple halls, lighting incense, reciting sacred words, maintaining the connection between the king and the gods. Meanwhile, Egypt itself continues to flourish. The Nile floods each year. Fields grow green with grain. Farmers harvest wheat and barley beneath the warm Egyptian sun. Boats continue to move along the river, carrying goods between cities and villages. The kingdom remains stable, prosperous, a reflection of the order that the Egyptians believed their kings had established. And above it all, the pyramid watches silently from the desert plateau. After the reign of Khufu, new kings rise to power. One of them is his son, Khafre. Khafre also builds a pyramid at Giza. His pyramid stands close beside that of his father. Though slightly smaller, its position upon higher ground makes it appear nearly as tall. During Khafre's reign, another monument is carved from the bedrock of the plateau. A colossal statue with the body of a lion and the face of a king. This statue is known today as the Great Sphinx of Giza. For thousands of years, the Sphinx has watched over the pyramids, silent, mysterious, guarding the entrance to the royal necropolis. Later still, another king named Menkaure builds the third Great Pyramid at Giza. His pyramid is smaller than the others, but still impressive. Together, these three pyramids form one of the most extraordinary architectural landscapes in human history. The pyramids of Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. Standing side by side upon the desert plateau, a royal cemetery visible from miles across the Nile Valley. Beyond the pyramids, smaller tombs begin to appear. These belong to officials, priests, architects, and administrators who served the royal court. Many of these tombs are mastabas, flat-roofed rectangular structures built from stone. Inside them, walls are decorated with carvings, scenes showing daily life, farming, fishing, cooking, craftsmanship. These carvings reveal glimpses of the world that existed during the age of the pyramids, the lives of ordinary people, captured in stone beside the tombs of kings. Over time, the Giza Plateau becomes a vast necropolis, a city of the dead. Thousands of tombs spread across the desert, each one belonging to someone connected to the royal court. The architects who designed the pyramids, the officials who managed the kingdom, the priests who served in the temples, and perhaps even some of the workers who helped build the great monument. They rest near the pyramid they helped create, their tombs facing the monument that shaped their lives. As centuries pass, the Great Pyramid becomes more than a tomb. It becomes a symbol, a reminder of Egypt's ancient greatness. Future generations look upon it with admiration. Even later Egyptian rulers, living thousands of years after Khufu, view the pyramid as a relic of a legendary past. Some attempt to restore nearby temples. Others leave inscriptions describing their visits. The pyramid becomes part of Egypt's collective memory, a monument that connects later civilizations to their distant ancestors. And so the Great Pyramid continues its quiet watch over the Nile Valley. Storms come and go. Winds move sand across the plateau. Empires rise. Empires fall. But the pyramid remains, stone upon stone, layer upon layer, just as its builders left it more than 4,500 years ago. A monument born from vision, from organization, from the labor of thousands of workers, and from the ambition of a king who wished to build something eternal. Even now, as the sun sets beyond the desert horizon, the pyramid stands beneath the fading light, its ancient stones glowing softly in the evening sky, and the winds of the desert move gently across the plateau, just as they did when the first stone was laid, long ago, in the age of the pharaohs. The centuries continue to pass across the land of Egypt. Kings come and go. Dynasties rise. Dynasties fade. Temples are built along the Nile. Cities grow beside the river. Yet through all these changes, the Great Pyramid remains. Silent, unmoving, watching over the desert from the Giza Plateau. The monument of Khufu has already survived hundreds of years. Soon, it will survive thousands. Over time, the world beyond Egypt begins to change as well. New civilizations appear in distant lands. Kingdoms grow in Mesopotamia. Cities flourish around the Mediterranean Sea. Trade routes expand across deserts and oceans, and travelers begin to hear stories about the pyramids of Egypt. Stories of enormous stone mountains built by ancient kings. Stories of monuments so vast that no one can fully explain how they were created. Curiosity spreads, and eventually, visitors from distant lands arrive to see the pyramids for themselves. One of the most famous visitors is the Greek historian Herodotus. He travels to Egypt around the 5th century BC. By this time, the Great Pyramid is already more than 2,000 years old, older than many of the civilizations Herodotus knows. When he sees the monument, he is amazed by its size. He speaks with Egyptian priests, listening to the stories they tell about its construction. They describe the thousands of workers who once labored on the plateau, the long years required to build the monument, and the enormous resources used to complete it. Herodotus records these stories in his writings, preserving one of the earliest historical accounts of the pyramids. Centuries later, Egypt becomes part of the Roman world. Roman travelers visit the plateau. Some climb the pyramid, carefully stepping up the massive stone blocks. Others explore the temples and tombs surrounding the monument. For them, the pyramid already seems unimaginably ancient, a relic from a distant past, a monument built by a civilization far older than Rome itself. Yet the pyramid remains strong, its stones still firmly in place, its shape still dominating the desert horizon. Time moves forward. The Roman Empire eventually fades. New cultures and religions appear across the region. The city of Cairo grows near the pyramids. People living in the city sometimes take stones from the outer casing of the pyramid, using the bright limestone blocks to build mosques and houses. Gradually, the smooth outer surface disappears, leaving the rough core stones exposed. The pyramid loses some of its original beauty, but its structure remains intact. Even without the casing stones, the monument still towers above the desert. During the medieval period, travelers from distant lands continue to visit the pyramids. Some come from Europe, others from the Middle East. Many describe the monument in their writings. Each visitor tries to explain how such a structure could have been built. Some imagine mysterious machines. Others believe lost civilizations must have created it. But the truth is simpler. The pyramid was built by skilled workers, carefully organized, patiently placing stone upon stone over many years. In the centuries that follow, interest in the pyramids continues to grow. Scholars and explorers arrive to study the ancient monuments. They measure the pyramid's sides. They map its interior passages. They search for hidden chambers within the structure. One of the most famous moments occurs when explorers discover the internal corridors leading deep inside the pyramid. Passages that had remained sealed for centuries. Within these passages, they find the king's chamber and the empty granite sarcophagus waiting silently in the darkness. The chamber built for the burial of Khufu. Modern archaeologists eventually begin to study the entire pyramid complex more carefully. They excavate the surrounding plateau. They uncover the remains of the workers' village, the bakeries, the breweries, the storage buildings, all the places where the pyramid builders once lived. These discoveries reveal an important truth. The pyramid was not built by slaves, but by organized teams of workers supported by the Egyptian state. Farmers, craftsmen, stonemasons, administrators, thousands of people working together on one of the greatest construction projects in history. Archaeologists also discover ancient papyri describing the transport of stone along the Nile. Documents written by Egyptian officials, recording shipments of limestone from the quarries of Tura. These records help modern historians understand how carefully the construction was organized, how boats carried stone along canals connected to the river, how workers unloaded the blocks and dragged them across the desert. These discoveries gradually reveal the real story of the pyramid's construction. A story not of mystery, but of remarkable human effort. And through all these centuries, the pyramid itself remains largely unchanged. Storms come and go. Winds move across the plateau. Empires rise and fall across the world. Yet the Great Pyramid still stands, its base firmly anchored in the limestone bedrock, its stones still locked together with astonishing precision. More than 4,500 years after its construction, the monument continues to watch over the Nile Valley, just as it did when the first stone was placed, long ago, in the age of the pharaohs. The desert remains quiet around the pyramids. Day after day, the sun rises over the Nile Valley. Light spreads slowly across the sands. And the Great Pyramid continues to stand upon the Giza Plateau, a monument older than most civilizations, built during the reign of Khufu more than 4,500 years ago. And even now, in the modern world, people continue to study it, to measure it, to understand how such a structure was created. Engineers have examined the pyramid carefully. They measure its base. They study the angles of its sides. They analyze the placement of its stones. And what they find continues to impress even modern experts. The base of the pyramid forms an almost perfect square, each side measuring roughly 230 meters. The difference between the longest and shortest side is incredibly small, only a few centimeters. The pyramid's alignment with the cardinal directions is also remarkably accurate. Its sides point almost exactly north, south, east, and west. Achieving such precision without modern instruments required careful observation of the stars and extremely patient surveying. Inside the pyramid,
Scientists have also explored the internal corridors, the passages leading toward the king's chamber, the long, sloping corridors, and the magnificent grand gallery. Modern technology has even allowed researchers to look for hidden spaces within the structure, using techniques such as scanning with cosmic rays. These scans suggest that additional voids may exist within the pyramid, hidden spaces that were part of the original design. Some of these areas remain mysterious, but they remind us that the pyramid still holds secrets, even after thousands of years. The construction itself remains one of the greatest achievements of ancient engineering. Historians estimate that the pyramid contains about 2.3 million stone blocks, many of them weighing several tons. Altogether, the pyramid may contain more than 6 million tons of stone. And yet, these stones were placed with remarkable care, without cranes, without iron tools, without modern machines. Instead, the builders relied on teamwork, simple tools, and careful planning. The result was a monument that has survived thousands of years of weather and earthquakes.
Archaeologists studying the nearby quarries have discovered where many of the stones were cut. Large sections of limestone were taken directly from the bedrock of the plateau itself. Other stones came from distant quarries: granite from Aswan, white limestone from Tura. These materials traveled hundreds of kilometers along the Nile, loaded onto wooden boats, floating north toward the construction site. This river transport system was essential to the entire project. Without the Nile, moving such enormous quantities of stone would have been nearly impossible. Excavations near the pyramid have also revealed the remains of ancient harbors. Canals once connected the Nile River to the construction area. Boats carrying stone could travel directly to the base of the plateau. There, workers unloaded the cargo and transported the blocks toward the pyramid. These discoveries confirmed that the builders used Egypt's natural waterways as part of their construction network, turning the Nile into a vast supply route for the project. Nearby, the remains of the workers' settlement continue to reveal details about daily life during the construction. Archaeologists have uncovered bakeries, workshops, and communal sleeping areas. Animal bones found at the site show that workers consumed beef, sheep, and goat, more meat than many ordinary Egyptians might have eaten. This suggests that the workers were well fed. Their labor was valuable to the state, and the government ensured they had enough food to sustain their work. The cemetery of the workers has also been discovered. Burials of men who helped build the pyramid. Their skeletons reveal signs of heavy physical labor, muscles that once pulled ropes and lifted stones, bones that healed after injuries. These graves lie near the pyramid itself, an honor reserved for those connected to the royal project. Even in death, these workers remained close to the monument they helped create. Today, millions of people travel to Egypt each year to see the pyramids. Visitors walk across the plateau. They stand beside the enormous stones. Some climb the lower blocks of the Great Pyramid, feeling the rough limestone beneath their hands, looking upward at the vast structure rising above them. Many find it difficult to believe that human beings built such a monument so long ago. Yet every stone tells the same story. A story of human effort, of careful planning, of thousands of workers cooperating across decades. As the sun begins to set over the desert, the pyramid casts a long shadow across the plateau. The sky turns orange,
then deep red, and finally dark blue as evening approaches. The winds move softly across the sand, just as they did when the first stone was placed, long before modern cities, long before modern technology, back in the age of the pharaohs. And through all these changes, the Great Pyramid still stands, watching quietly over the Nile Valley, a monument to one of the greatest achievements of human civilization. Even after thousands of years, the Great Pyramid continues to stand quietly beneath the desert sky. Storms have come and gone. Empires have risen and fallen. Cities have grown beside the Nile. Yet the pyramid remains, unmoved, silent upon the Giza Plateau. The monument first imagined during the reign of Khufu still rises above the desert, stone upon stone, layer upon layer, just as it did when the builders completed their work more than 4,500 years ago. For the ancient Egyptians, the pyramid was never simply a building. It was part of a sacred vision, a place where heaven and earth met, a monument designed to help the king's spirit travel into the afterlife. The pyramid's shape itself carried meaning. Its sloping sides may have symbolized rays of sunlight descending from the sky, connecting the king with the sun god. Or perhaps it represented the primeval mound of creation, the first land that rose from the waters at the beginning of the world. To the Egyptians, the pyramid was both architecture and theology, stone transformed into spiritual meaning. Inside the monument, the hidden corridors and chambers remain mostly silent. Visitors who enter the pyramid today walk through narrow passages. They climb the long incline of the Grand Gallery, and they eventually reach the chamber where the granite sarcophagus still rests, empty now, yet still surrounded by the enormous granite blocks that protect it. These stones were cut in distant quarries near Aswan, transported hundreds of kilometers along the Nile, lifted high into the pyramid by the labor of countless workers. Even today, their weight and precision continue to impress engineers and historians alike.
The surrounding plateau still holds many traces of the ancient world. Nearby stand the pyramids built by Khufu's successors, the Pyramid of Khafre and the smaller Pyramid of Menkaure. Together they form the Great Pyramid Complex of Giza. Guarding this ancient cemetery is the enormous limestone statue known as the Great Sphinx of Giza. Its body shaped like a lion, its face carved in the image of a king. For thousands of years, the Sphinx has watched over the pyramids, facing the rising sun each morning, silent beneath the desert sky. Elsewhere on the plateau, the tombs of ancient officials remain. Stone chambers carved into the desert rock. Some of these tombs contain beautiful carvings, scenes from everyday life in ancient Egypt. Farmers harvesting grain, boats sailing along the Nile, craftsmen shaping tools. These images reveal a world long vanished, a civilization whose people once lived, worked, and dreamed beside the same river that still flows through Egypt today. Archaeologists continue to explore the plateau. Each generation of researchers uncovers new clues, fragments of tools, ancient documents, ruins of workshops and homes. These discoveries slowly reveal the human story behind the pyramid, not the myths of mysterious builders, but the real people who shaped the stones. Farmers who labored during the flood season,
stonemasons who carefully cut each block, carpenters who built sledges and ramps, scribes who recorded the supplies and labor. Thousands of individuals working together over many years. The pyramid stands today as a reminder of their work. It represents more than the ambition of a king. It represents the ability of a civilization to organize itself, to plan, to cooperate, and to build something that would last far beyond their own lifetimes. The builders could never have imagined how long their monument would endure. Yet their work has survived thousands of years, through storms, through earthquakes, through the passage of countless generations. Today, when visitors stand beside the Great Pyramid, they often feel a sense of wonder. They look upward at the enormous stones, and they try to imagine the workers who once climbed across the ramps, pulling sledges, shaping blocks, working beneath the same sun that shines on the desert today. In that moment, the distance between past and present becomes smaller. The ancient world feels closer. The builders feel real, their efforts visible in every stone of the monument. And as evening slowly settles over the plateau, the pyramid casts its long shadow across the desert sand. The sky darkens. Stars begin to appear above the Nile Valley, just as they did thousands of years ago when the ancient surveyors studied the night sky, aligning the pyramid with the stars, designing a monument that would face the heavens forever. The winds move softly across the plateau. The pyramid remains still, a silent guardian of history, a monument built in the age of the pharaohs, and a reminder that human ambition, when guided by patience and cooperation, can create something truly eternal. The centuries continue to move quietly across the Egyptian desert. Empires change. Cities grow and disappear. Generations come and go along the banks of the Nile. Yet the Great Pyramid remains, still standing upon the Giza plateau, its massive stones resting exactly where ancient builders placed them thousands of years ago. The monument of Khufu continues to watch over the desert, silent, patient, unchanged by the passing of time. As the modern age begins, people from around the world become increasingly curious about the pyramids. Scholars, explorers, historians. They travel to Egypt to study these ancient structures. They measure the stones. They explore the corridors inside the pyramid. They examine the surrounding temples and tombs. Each visitor hopes to understand the story of how the monument was built and how such a remarkable project was accomplished by ancient people. One of the earliest modern explorers to enter the Great Pyramid is the British archaeologist Howard Vyse in the 19th century. He studies the internal passages of the pyramid, examining the chambers above the king's chamber. These chambers had remained hidden for thousands of years. Inside them, Vyse discovers something remarkable. Marks left by the ancient builders, red paint inscriptions written by the workers themselves. These marks include the name of the king, Khufu, written in ancient hieroglyphs. These inscriptions confirm what historians had long suspected, that the Great Pyramid was indeed built during the reign of Khufu.
The discovery is important because for many centuries, the identity of the pyramid's builder had been uncertain. Ancient Greek writers had described the monument, but their stories were not always reliable. The marks discovered inside the pyramid provide direct evidence.
written by the workers themselves more than 4,000 years ago. Evidence preserved within the hidden chambers of the monument. As archaeological research continues, scientists begin studying the surrounding plateau more carefully. They examine the ground around the pyramid. They dig beneath the sand, searching for traces of the people who once worked here. And slowly, the ancient construction site begins to reveal its secrets. Near the pyramid, archaeologists discover the remains of the workers' settlement, the village where thousands of laborers once lived. There they find the remains of houses, bakeries, workshops, and storage buildings. These discoveries provide a remarkable glimpse into the lives of the builders. Excavations reveal large ovens used for baking bread, massive pottery jars once used for brewing beer, animal bones from cattle, sheep, and goats. Evidence that the workers received substantial meals, enough to sustain them through their demanding labor. Archaeologists also uncover tools, copper chisels, stone hammers, fragments of sledges used to drag heavy blocks across the desert. These objects confirm many of the theories historians had long proposed about pyramid construction. They reveal the everyday tools used by the workers. Simple tools, yet capable of shaping one of the greatest monuments in human history. One of the most fascinating discoveries comes from ancient papyrus documents. These papyri describe the transport of limestone blocks along the Nile River. They were written by an Egyptian official named Marir, a man responsible for supervising teams of workers moving stone from the quarries of Tura. His records describe how boats carried the limestone along canals connected to the Nile, delivering stone to the pyramid construction site. These documents provide a rare glimpse into the organization behind the project. They show how carefully the ancient Egyptians managed resources and labor, ensuring the steady flow of materials needed to build the monument. Modern technology has also allowed scientists to study the pyramid in new ways. Advanced scanning methods can examine the structure without damaging it. One technique uses tiny particles called cosmic rays. These particles pass naturally through stone. By measuring how the particles move through the pyramid, scientists can detect hidden spaces inside the structure. Recent scans have revealed previously unknown voids within the pyramid, large empty spaces concealed within the stone. Their purpose remains uncertain. They may have been part of the construction process, or perhaps part of the pyramid's internal design. Even after thousands of years, the monument still holds mysteries. The Great Pyramid continues to inspire curiosity and admiration. Architects study its proportions. Engineers examine its structural stability. Historians analyze the records of ancient Egypt. Each new discovery helps us understand the pyramid more clearly, not as a mysterious artifact from a lost civilization, but as the product of a highly organized society, a society capable of planning, cooperation, and remarkable engineering. And yet, for all that modern science has revealed, the pyramid still retains a sense of wonder. Standing beside it, one cannot help but imagine the thousands of workers who once filled the plateau. The masons shaping stone, the teams pulling sledges up ramps, the scribes recording shipments of supplies, the administrators directing the vast project. All of them working together under the authority of Khufu. Their efforts frozen in stone, preserved in the monument that still stands before us. And so, as the sun begins to set once more over the desert, the Great Pyramid remains exactly where it has always been. Silent, ancient, and enduring. A monument that continues to reveal its secrets slowly, to those who patiently seek to understand its story. As the centuries continue to pass, the Great Pyramid remains one of the most studied monuments in the world. Visitors walk across the sands of the Giza Plateau. Scholars measure its stones, engineers analyze its structure, and historians carefully examine the records left behind by ancient Egypt. Yet even after thousands of years, people still ask the same quiet question. How exactly did the ancient Egyptians build such an enormous monument? The answer is not a single method, but a combination of careful planning, organization, and simple engineering techniques.
One of the most important challenges the builders faced was lifting heavy stones to higher levels of the pyramid. The lower layers were relatively easy. Stone blocks could be dragged directly across the ground, but as the pyramid rose higher, the workers needed ways to lift stones upward. Many historians believe that large ramps played an essential role in solving this problem. These ramps may have been constructed from mud brick, packed sand, and limestone rubble, gradually rising alongside the pyramid as the structure grew. Workers could drag stone blocks up these ramps using sledges and ropes, slowly moving the stones to the higher levels of the monument. Several different ramp designs have been proposed by historians and engineers. Some believe a straight ramp extended from the ground directly to the pyramid. Others suggest ramps wrapped around the pyramid in a spiral. Still others imagine ramps that zigzagged along the pyramid's sides. Each design attempts to explain how workers could move heavy stones upward without modern machinery. The exact method used by the ancient builders is still debated today. But whatever design they used, the ramps must have been enormous structures themselves, large enough to support thousands of workers and countless stone blocks. Another important question concerns the movement of the stones themselves. Each limestone block used in the pyramid weighs several tons. Some of the granite blocks inside the structure weigh much more. Yet the ancient Egyptians managed to move these stones across the desert with surprising efficiency. Evidence from ancient artwork shows workers dragging stones on wooden sledges. These sledges slid across the sand, and workers poured water onto the ground in front of them. The wet sand reduced friction, allowing the sledges to move more easily. This simple technique made it possible to move heavy blocks with coordinated human effort. Teams of workers likely pulled each sledge using thick ropes. Dozens of men working together, their movements guided by overseers who kept the teams moving in rhythm. Some teams may have used wooden rollers. Others relied on levers to position stones precisely once they reached their destination. These methods required patience and coordination, but they were effective, and they allowed the builders to move millions of stones across the plateau. Modern experiments have shown that these ancient techniques could indeed work. Engineers and archaeologists have recreated sledges similar to those used in ancient Egypt. They have tested the effect of wet sand, and they have demonstrated that relatively small teams of workers can move large stone blocks using these methods. Such experiments help confirm what the archaeological evidence already suggests. The pyramid was built through organized labor and practical engineering, not through mysterious or impossible technologies. Another mystery concerns the precision of the pyramid's construction. The base of the Great Pyramid is astonishingly level. The sides are carefully aligned with the cardinal directions. Even small errors in measurement could have caused the pyramid to lean or collapse. Yet the ancient builders achieved remarkable accuracy. They likely used simple surveying tools, measuring ropes, wooden sighting instruments, and careful observations of the stars. By studying the movement of stars in the night sky, Egyptian surveyors could determine true north. This allowed them to align the pyramid with incredible precision. Inside the pyramid, the builders also demonstrated advanced understanding of structural engineering. The king's chamber is protected by massive granite beams placed above the ceiling. These beams redirect the enormous weight of the pyramid away from the chamber itself. Without these relieving structures, the pressure from millions of tons of stone might have crushed the chamber below. This design shows that the builders understood the forces acting within the pyramid, and they developed clever solutions to protect the internal spaces. Despite all these discoveries, some questions remain unanswered. The pyramid still holds mysteries, hidden spaces detected by modern scans, corridors whose purpose is uncertain, construction techniques that historians continue to debate. But these mysteries only add to the fascination of the monument. They remind us that even today, there is still more to learn about the civilization that built the pyramid. And yet, perhaps the most important lesson of the Great Pyramid is not mystery, but cooperation. Thousands of workers, craftsmen, engineers, administrators, farmers, all working together over many years, guided by the authority of the king, supported by the resources of the Egyptian state. Their combined effort created something extraordinary, a monument that has survived more than 4,000 years, standing quietly beneath the desert sky.
As evening settles over the plateau, the shadows of the pyramids stretch across the sand. The desert winds move softly along the ancient stones, and the Great Pyramid remains exactly where it has always been, watching over the Nile Valley, just as it did when the first stone was placed, in the distant age of Khufu. Across the centuries, the Great Pyramid has continued to capture the imagination of the world. Civilizations have come and gone. Languages have changed. Empires have risen and faded. Yet the monument on the Giza Plateau remains one of the most recognizable structures on Earth. It began as the tomb of a single ruler, a monument built for Khufu during the Old Kingdom of ancient Egypt. But over time, the pyramid became something more, a symbol of human achievement, a reminder of what careful planning and cooperation can accomplish. For centuries, people across the world have heard stories of the pyramids. Merchants traveling along ancient trade routes spoke of enormous stone monuments rising from the Egyptian desert. Sailors crossing the Mediterranean carried these stories to distant ports. Travelers wrote descriptions of the pyramids in books and journals. Many who had never seen them began to imagine what they must look like. Some believed the pyramids were built by giants. Others believed lost civilizations must have created them. The true story, the story of skilled workers, careful planning, and organized labor, was often forgotten beneath layers of legend. In Europe during the Renaissance, scholars once again became fascinated by the ancient world. They studied the pyramids as symbols of lost knowledge. Artists drew pictures of the monuments. Architects examined their proportions. Some buildings constructed during this period were even inspired by pyramid shapes. The geometry of the Great Pyramid continued to influence architectural thought long after the age of the pharaohs had ended. As scientific study expanded during the 18th and 19th centuries, more explorers traveled to Egypt. They carefully measured the pyramid's size, mapped its internal passages, and studied the surrounding temples and tombs. These investigations helped reveal the true history of the monument, that it had been built through the efforts of thousands of workers, not through magic, not through forgotten technology, but through patience, skill, and the careful organization of resources. Modern archaeology has continued this work. Researchers study the quarries where the stones were cut. They examine the ancient harbors where boats once delivered supplies. They explore the ruins of the workers' village, where the builders lived during the decades of construction. Each discovery adds another small detail to the story. A story that began more than 4,000 years ago. Today, the Great Pyramid is one of the most visited historical sites in the world. Travelers arrive from every continent. Some come to study its engineering. Others come simply to stand beside it, to look up at the enormous stones, to feel the scale of the monument with their own eyes. Many visitors experience a moment of quiet reflection when they stand near the pyramid, because the monument does something remarkable. It connects people across thousands of years of history. The stones beneath their hands were shaped by workers who lived long before modern nations existed. People who spoke a different language, who lived beside the same Nile River, who worked beneath the same sun. And yet, their efforts are still visible today. The pyramid also reminds us how carefully ancient civilizations understood the world around them. The builders aligned the structure with the cardinal directions. They studied the movement of the stars. They shaped the monument according to geometric principles that still impress engineers today. Even without modern tools, they created a structure whose accuracy remains extraordinary. The Great Pyramid is not simply large. It is precise, balanced, carefully designed. Every stone placed with intention. For thousands of years, this monument has endured the harsh desert environment. Winds have blown across its surface. Sandstorms have struck its sides. Earthquakes have shaken the plateau. Yet the structure remains stable, its massive base anchored firmly in the limestone bedrock, its stones still tightly joined together. The builders of ancient Egypt created something far stronger than they could have imagined, a monument that continues to endure through the passage of time.
And when the sun begins to set across the desert, the pyramid becomes even more beautiful. Golden light spreads across its stones. The shadows of its edges stretch across the plateau. The sky slowly darkens above the Nile Valley, just as it did thousands of years ago when the builders finished their work. When the monument of Khufu first stood complete beneath the Egyptian sky. The winds move softly across the sand. The pyramid remains silent, watching the endless flow of history. The desert night settles quietly over Egypt. The heat of the day slowly fades. The air becomes cooler. And above the wide valley of the Nile, the stars begin to appear, one by one, shining softly in the dark sky. High above the Giza plateau, the Great Pyramid stands in silence, its ancient stones resting exactly where they have been for more than 4,500 years. The monument imagined during the reign of Khufu remains unchanged,
a vast shape rising from the desert floor, calm, steady, enduring. During the day, the pyramid catches the sunlight, its rough limestone blocks glowing beneath the bright Egyptian sky. But at night, the monument becomes something different. Its edges soften in the darkness, its enormous shape blends with the shadows of the desert. Only its outline remains visible against the starlit sky. And in that quiet moment, it is possible to imagine the ancient world as it once was. The world of the pyramid's builders. Thousands of years ago, this plateau was filled with activity. Voices calling across the ramps, teams of workers pulling sledges, stonemasons shaping blocks with copper tools, scribes recording deliveries of stone and grain, boats arriving from the Nile carrying limestone from Tura, granite blocks traveling north from the distant quarries of Aswan. The desert once echoed with the sounds of construction, but tonight there is only silence. The work of the builders is finished, yet their creation remains. The pyramid is more than a monument. It is a story written in stone, a story of a civilization that flourished along the Nile River, a civilization that believed in order, in balance, in the harmony between the world of the living and the world of the gods. The pyramid was built as a bridge between those worlds, a place where the spirit of the king could ascend toward the heavens, where the journey into the afterlife could begin. Yet the monument also tells another story, a quieter story, the story of the people who built it, the farmers who traveled from their villages during the flood season, the craftsmen who shaped the stones, the carpenters who repaired sledges and tools, the cooks who prepared bread and beer in the workers' village, the doctors who cared for injured laborers, and the scribes who recorded every shipment of stone and grain. Thousands of individuals, each one performing a small part of the work, together creating one of the greatest achievements in human history. When we look at the pyramid today, we often think of kings, of pharaohs and royal ambition. But hidden within the monument are the efforts of countless ordinary people, their names mostly forgotten, yet their work still visible in every stone, every block carefully shaped, every course carefully aligned. Their labor continues to endure long after their lives have passed. The pyramid also reminds us of the power of patience. It was not built in a single year, or even in a single decade. It required many seasons of careful work, stone by stone, layer by layer, each generation of workers contributing to the growing structure, until finally, the pyramid reached its full height beneath the desert sky. A monument not only to a king, but to perseverance. And now, as the night deepens across the plateau, the pyramid stands beneath the same stars that ancient surveyors once studied. Those early engineers watched the movement of the stars to align the pyramid with the world. North, south, east, west. Their careful measurements helped shape the monument we still see today. Even now, those same stars continue to move slowly across the sky, just as they did thousands of years ago. The winds move softly across the desert sand. Grains of sand drift gently along the base of the pyramid. The plateau grows quiet. Visitors leave. The night settles fully across the ancient landscape, and the Great Pyramid remains where it has always stood, watching the Nile Valley, watching the passing centuries. A monument built with patience, with skill, and with the collective effort of an entire civilization. So tonight, as the stars shine above the Egyptian desert, the pyramid rests beneath the quiet sky, still standing, still enduring, just as it has for more than 4,000 years. A silent reminder of the people who built it and of the remarkable world they left behind.